A few moments later.
Hi there everyone, welcome back. This is the second video of Prac 2. And so now we need to create the CSV file. So we've got our data here, site, eastings and northings. Remember this is in UTM. So first what we want to do is we want to go to Excel. And we actually want to load up this information in Excel. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just write down site. The next one is going to be eastings and northings. And then it's basically just a case of putting in these values. So we've got mount all the way down to 3. And we've got mount 7. Oops, sorry. We've got mount 7 and mount 11. And then it's merely a case of actually copy and paste. What you do is you actually want to save this. So you want to save file, save as, and this one obviously I'm going to save it to this PC. And I don't want to save it as an XLSX file. And the reason for that is because I actually want it to be a CSV file. So I'm going to look for CSV. And then the one that you want is going to be CSV, comma, delimited. Now there are a number of different CSVs out there. There's CSV Macintosh, CSV MS-DOS. Theoretically they should work, but just to be on the safe side, just go for CSV, comma, delimited. Okay, so as you can see there, it's CSV delimited. And then obviously you want to label it mounts. And you want to save it in a specific folder. In my case, I'm going to save it in my course folder. Unfortunately, you can't see that information because it's hidden. OBS doesn't like to show folders that are outside of the window. So I do apologize. But ultimately, what I'm doing now is I'm just saving it onto the computer. For you, you can save it onto the desktop in a folder, or if you're using OneDrive, you can save it into your OneDrive folder as well. The big thing really is ultimately that you know where you've saved your files and that you can retrieve it as you need to. That's really the most important part of all of this. So I've saved it. So mounts is saved, and it's saved as a CSV. So the next thing I want to do now is I want to open up QGIS. So remember the version that we're using for this, for the Prac, is going to be QGIS 2.10. Alright, so this is basically our last Prac. So this is theoretically where you would have ended up with. You would have ended up with, depending on what you chose, which of the World War II sites you were looking at. I looked at pillboxes, and these are the ones that showed up. And then you also have, using the query, it would have then showcased where those specific pillboxes are and which counties they would highlight. So the nice thing about the query system is that you can ask a specific question. And in this case, my question was fairly simple. I wanted to know which counties contain this item. And so that's what I'm saying, or what I was saying earlier, is that I want you to play with it. So see if you can create your own queries. But the key is ultimately to ask the right questions. So making them like making random maps and just using the query is cool. You might end up with something interesting. But I want you to have a specific question in mind. And that's where it becomes interesting. So if you think about something specific, it would be very helpful to do that. So if you if you're looking at something specific, or there's a specific question that you want to have answered, you can use the query system, and you can use the Boolean operators to query for that answer. In many ways, it's a bit like using statistics or using a statistical program. You have to have some idea of what your question is to use the right method and to get information that is not rubbish. So my advice would be, yes, play with it, see what these functions can do, but then when you are doing something, or you're doing a research project, and you want to use a GIS and you've got data for it, ask questions. So for instance, you might want to, a great example would be, in South Africa, you might look at a site and try to find out where is all the lower Stone Age sites in a province, or where are all the Middle Stone Age sites in a specific area. So these are things that you could probably do as well. Or maybe you've got a special interest in the Iron Age, and you can do similar queries. All right, so quickly, I think what we want to do now is we just quickly want to import the CSV file. So remember, we've saved the CSV file. This is my version of the model answer for our previous prac. Yours most likely will look a little bit different colors. That is fine. You might have chosen something different points, so different points would have been highlighted. Perfect. This is really what I wanted, or something very similar to this. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to import my CSV file. So you'll notice here, if I hover over it, it actually says add delimited text layer. So I click on it, and this is what comes up. I go to browse, and there's mounts. So this is the one that I've actually saved. I open up. Okay. And I click on CSV. Now there's something that actually we noticed, a little error that came up. Let's just see if I can replicate it. So for instance, what happened to a couple of the students as they were doing this, even though they were uploading everything correctly, and they were uploading the CSV file, strangely enough, they would find this. So for instance, mounts, the numbers and everything would be put into one folder. When that happens, you basically have to say, you have to have a look. What is being shown? So in their case, it was the semicolon. So you have to tell QGIS to take out the semicolon. And so you click on semicolon, and once you've done that, it will put it into its correct. It will basically say, here's my column for Mount for the sites, here's my column for Eastings, and here's my column for Northings. So for some reason, that's it. I'm not sure why, but for some of the QGIS versions, this is what happened. This is an error that came up. So just be mindful of that. It is something you can troubleshoot. Sometimes it might just be a case of going to back to CSV. Sometimes it might go to custom delimiters, and then you might even have it where it's spaces, and then you say, okay, I don't want it as spaces, and then you can change it. Right, so you can actually do this. So if you do have that issue, you can definitely just play with this a little bit. So here, once again, I click on comma, and now I've got everything under comma. So I just go back to CSV. Then the other thing you want to do is you want to look at the X field right at the bottom. So Eastings has to be on your X side, right? And then Northings, it has to be on your Y field. So once you have that, that is perfect. So click OK. Now this is where it gets a little bit interesting. In South Africa, we use WGS84 as our coordinate reference system. So we actually don't use WGS84 per se. We use a modified version of WGS84. I think it's called Hartebees Poort 94. So it's a version of WGS84, but it's just slightly modified for South Africa. In Britain, they use something different. They use OSGB 1936, so that's the British National Grid, and it's EPSG 27700. So for me, it will pop up quite easily because I've already done the search for it. What I want you to do is I want you to do the search. So when you get to the filter, I want you to go OSG 1936, and then I want you to look for transverse Mercator, and then look for this EPSG 27700. Right, so that's what I want you to do. Click on it and then press OK. So those points will then actually be plotted. But I want to go see where my points are. So what I'm going to do now is I will right click on it. So I right click on the mounts and I say zoom to layer. Because I'm zooming to that layer, it will actually show me those layers. So here we say Suffolk, and there are my burial points. Let me just move this over so you can see. So those points are there. You'll notice, oh, everything is brown. Why is that? Well, if I zoom out, there we go. So now I've zoomed out a little bit. I can move this around a bit with a little hand. And there are other features as well. So there's probably the floodplain of a river. So the next step that I want to do is I actually want to add more or additional information. So I'm going to try to make a map. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to make a map using these specific mounts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these ones off for now because I'm not going to use them. Because that's obviously I'm not going to use these guys. But what I am going to do is I'm going to use a new, completely different data set. So if you go back to our project brief, it says adding map data. So adding map data, we're now going to add additional information to our map.